He says that he has not abandoned the higher aspirations, but in fact that he's achieved the supreme goal. He says that he's discovered the middle way, the noble eightfold path which avoids the extremes of indulgence and luxury on the one hand and the extreme of self-mortification on the other hand. Then he goes on to proclaim the Four Noble Truths and to tell how his discovery of the Four Noble Truths issued in his enlightenment. At the end of the discourse, the seniormost ascetic, whose name is Kondanya, grasps the Dhamma. He opens his mental eye and he reaches the first stage of enlightenment, the stage of stream entry. Then, with some further elaborations, the other four ascetics also gain understanding. Then, after the second sermon, the discourse on anatta, or selflessness, all the five ascetics gain arhatship, full enlightenment and liberation of the mind. In the months ahead, the Buddha's following expands by leaps and by bounds. He soon gathers around himself a group of young men who enter the order and with a little bit of teaching achieve arhatship. At the end of the first rains retreat, the Buddha gathers the 60 disciples around him, who are all arhants, and then he sends them out into the world to spread the liberating message of the Dhamma. And in his talk, he emphasizes compassion as the motive for teaching. He says, "Monks, I am freed from all fetters, human and divine, and you too are free from all fetters. Therefore, go forth into the world for the good of the many folk, for the happiness of the many folk, out of compassion for the world, and teach the Dhamma. Make known the Dhamma which is pure in the beginning, pure in the middle, pure in the end. Teach the holy life, completely purified and perfect." The Buddha himself then commenced his long career of wandering that was to lead him from town to town, from village to village in northern India. In the second year after his enlightenment, he visited his home city of Kapilavatthu, and he taught the Dhamma to his family. Many of his relatives, including his father in former life, embraced the Dhamma and reached various stages of enlightenment. His son Rahula became a novice monk, and his wife Yasodhara became a laywoman, and afterwards became a bhikkhuni, a nun. Each year the Buddha would spend the 4 months of the rainy season in a single residence, most often either at Jetavana in the town of Savatthi or in the bamboo grove near Rajagriha. The other 8 months of the year he would spend wandering and teaching. Time doesn't allow us to deal with the details of the Buddha's ministry here, but the question can be raised why the Dhamma spread so rapidly, why it had such drawing power. These questions are especially important to us because the answers aren't confined to any single time period or country, but bring us to what is universal in the Buddha's teaching, hence to what is relevant to us right here and now. I think the rapid spread of the Buddha's Dhamma can be understood through the aim of the teaching and through the method that the Buddha lays down to achieve that aim. The Buddha's teaching speaks directly to the central problem at the core of human existence, the problem of suffering, and it offers to show a way out of suffering to perfect peace, to unconditioned happiness. The entire doctrine of the Buddha flows between these 2 points, suffering and the end of suffering. Every other consideration, all the speculations, the metaphysical concerns, the dogmatic subtleties that often infest religion, all of these are set aside as irrelevant. And not only does the Buddha make suffering and its cessation the focal point of his teaching, but he deals with the problem in a very realistic way, a way that is personal and immediate, a way that can be verified in our own experience. He traces suffering to its roots right in our own mind, in our own greed, our hatred, our delusion, and he holds that the cure, the solution, also has to be found in our minds, in purifying our minds from all of these defilements. As a result of this diagnosis, the Buddha rejects all extraneous religious forms which involve external reliances, the performance of rituals and sacrifices, the appeal to authoritative books, reliance on priests and saviors, the reliance on divine figures to grant us salvation. The Buddha emphasizes that self-reliance is the key to deliverance. He says to his disciples, he says, be islands to yourselves, be a refuge to yourselves, look to no external refuge. As the way to deliverance, he holds up purified conduct and correct understanding. And even the Buddha functions simply as a teacher of the path, not as a savior who grants salvation. The Buddha points out that the path to the end of suffering has to be followed each one by himself. The Buddha can show the path, but each person has to follow it according to his own energy and his own understanding. For this reason, the Buddha rejects the call for blind faith and belief. He doesn't want disciples who merely believe in him or accept his doctrine out of respect or through faith, but he asks his followers to examine his teaching, to investigate it, until they become convinced of it themselves. He says that just as a goldsmith, if he's given a lump of metal and told that it's gold, he doesn't merely accept this through belief, but he tests and examines it by burning, cutting, and scraping until he's convinced that it's gold. So in the same way, he says to his disciples, accept my doctrine only after examining and scrutinizing it, not merely out of respect for me.